This video will demo how to quickly create a Duplicator Pro package. For an in-depth overview of this process, please check out our other videos online. To get started, let's click the Create New button. This will take us to step 1 of the package creation wizard. A package consists of an archive and installer file. The archive file contains all your WordPress files and a copy of your database. The installer file is used to redeploy or install the archive file. Now let's go through the various step 1 inputs, starting with the template. Templates basically allow the settings on this page to be saved to a reusable profile. For this presentation, let's just use the unassigned template, which consists of the previous settings that were used when we created a package. Templates are optional for manual builds and come into play when setting up schedules. Next, let's give our package a name. Then we can choose from the various storage options that we've already pre-configured. In this case, we'll just use a local storage option. Now we can choose the various files and database tables that we'd like to include on our package. For example, say we wanted to exclude the cache folder. We could add the full path of the cache folder to our folders filter, and this would remove the cache folder. We can also filter out various database tables by clicking next to each database table. When this is completed and you have the options that you want, you can also fill in any various optional installer data. Please note these values are all optional and only help to fill in the installer at install time. Now let's go ahead and click the next button and proceed with a scan. When the scan is complete, we'll want to check for any notices. For example, say there was a size check notice that we needed to address. In this case, we could open up the size check area, fix the issues, and then continue with our filter and rescan. Once this is done, we can click the build button and continue with our build process. So now that our package is complete, we should see an entry in the packages screen. And there are several different columns that are shown here. So let's go through each one. The first one is the type column. Within the type column, you're going to see a couple different entry points. The first piece of information that we see here is manual. There can be two different types. There can be manual or there can be scheduled. Manual simply represents a package that was manually created, and a scheduled package would be one that was created based on the schedule. Now next to manual, you'll see a format, and there are two formats. The first format would be a zip format, and the second format is called a DAF format. In the DAF format, it's similar to a zip file, except it's just a custom internal format that's used specifically for larger packages. Now next to the zip, you might see in some cases a recovery point capable. And what this means is it just means that this package is capable of being a recovery point. And a recovery point simply just means that it can be restored from that particular location. So if you don't see a recovery point, that doesn't mean that you can't reuse this package to install. It just means that it can't be restored from within the recovery point wizard. So you'll want to look out for that if you want to set a recovery point or restore that. And you can do all of that through the menu on the right hand side, which we'll go over in more detail later. Now the next column is the created. That's basically the date and time that it was created. The size will show the size of the package, which is the compressed size. The name simply is just the name of the package. This can be any generic name. Now the installer entry point is used for how you want to use the installer. So in the event that you want to use a secure installer, you can simply come over to the settings of that installer, change the settings here to something more secure. We're going to save that off and go back to the packages screen. And now you'll see that we have a secure installer. Essentially, this is basically a secure name that you can place on a remote server that allows you to browse to the installer without somebody guessing the name of the installer. And you can copy that installer name to the clipboard. So in the event you want to download both the archive and the installer file, you can do that from here, place both the files on a location, and then just copy this installer name and browse to it, and you'll have a secure install process. Now, you don't really need to use the secure installer name if you're doing stuff on localhost or you're not on a public accessible server where you need it to be secure, but if you are on a remote server, it is recommended to use a secure installer name. Now, the last entry point over here is the download button, which allows you to download either the installer by itself, the archive by itself, or clicking the both files will simply prompt for both files to be downloaded. The other entry point here is, or button I should say, is the remote storage button. Now, when we created this package, we didn't set up any remote storages, so nothing is going to show here. But in the event we stored it to, say, OneDrive, then this would be highlighted and you could see the location at which it was stored. Now, the last menu is the hamburger menu here, and you can click on the details of the package. So if we click on this will take us to the details screen, which shows us all the information about our package, how many files, where the files are, etc., etc. And we can also click on the transfer tab, which allows us to transfer this particular package to any of our remote storages that we've already set up. Now, the last piece in this puzzle here is the recovery. The recovery section just allows you to either set the recovery point if you want to set it as the active recovery point, or you can set it and actually run the recovery wizard. So the recovery wizard will be covered in other videos in more detail, but just know that from this particular screen you can actually launch and use it. So this should go ahead and wrap up this particular video. Keep in mind that this is a short, quick overview of the package creation process. For a much more detailed analysis of all the inputs, check out some of our other videos that go into detail about all the different inputs in the package creation process.